Hey everybody, Snake Doc back. We're going to go through now and I'm going to detail strip this Stoeger STR-9 and we're going to compare the trigger group components of this to a factory Glock trigger setup. This is a smooth face, so this would be a 17 or 22. This is a factory connector on it, and we have, I think, the 336 ejector on it, which is a 9mm ejector for up to early Gen 4s, and then we have an extended slide lock lever, or slide stop, I should say. The slide lock is this. So we're just gonna take down the Stoeger here. We're gonna show clear, and we're gonna pull the trigger. I'll back that off just a little bit, and off it comes. So first thing I guess we'll do is we'll take out the striker assembly on this, and that's done the exact same way as a Glock. The nice thing is on this is the extractor is held in by this pin right here. So you don't have to worry about the spring-loaded bearing like on the Glock. But here you can see this little bit of plastic protrusion right here on the striker assembly. You're just going to push down on that to relieve pressure on the back plate and remove it. And when you let go, here's your back plate right here. Your striker assembly will come free. So there's the back end of the slide right there, and you can see the firing pin hole is round. And on a Glock it is a vertical cut. So here's our firing pin striker assembly, and you can see we have a blunted round tip on here. We have a round spring and a plastic assembly here with a non-polished striker face. I think what we'll do is we'll take this striker assembly apart, because in my bag of extra Glock parts right here, I'm going to look through real quick off camera. I'm pretty sure I have a new striker spring assembly in here. So let's see if I do. Yes, I do right here. This says 6-pound striker. Actually, I have two of them in here. I have a factory one. This is a factory Glock 17 one right here, and that's this light silver color. And then I have one right here that says 6-pound striker spring. So this would be an extra power striker spring by Wolf. I'm pretty sure this is Wolf. It's Wolf or Lone Wolf. It's one of the two. So what we'll do is we're going to compare. I'm going to leave those in those bags, but we're going to compare the overall length to the Stoeger one. So let's pull out the bench block here and go ahead and disassemble. Actually, I'm probably going to have to use the back of the slide because that doesn't have the right hole I need. So we're just going to use the back of the slide and just going to capture our striker here. We're going to pull down on the spring. Sorry, my camera angle. This is the best you're going to get right now. So I'm just going to pull down on the spring and pull out our two spring cups right here. So you'll see 1 and 2. And then I'm going to slowly let the striker spring off. I'm going to keep the striker in the end of the slide right here. So here's the striker spring for the Stoeger. And we're going to compare that to the Wolf. So you can see it's the same length as the Wolf 6-pound. And it looks as if it has less coils. Like, I think the coil windings are tighter for sure on that Wolf. Let's compare it to a stock Glock one. So here you can see it's shorter than a stock Glock one, but it's more tightly wound. Diameter would be identical. So you should be able to use this Glock striker spring. This all the Glock 9mm, actually I think all the Glock strikers use the same spring. I could be wrong on that, but this is the Glock 17, 19, 26. They should all use that same striker spring. So it is easily replaced part, and it is cheap. So let's take a look at, here's our striker assembly. There is a secondary spring on it, like on the MMP. There, you can see it right there. MMPs and SD9s have that, which spring loads that. And I'm pretty sure the Glock doesn't, because I don't remember that ever being on a Glock when I've taken apart a striker on a Glock. So I am just going to carefully put this back on and slip my spring cups back in place without launching the striker spring up to the ceiling or off into orbit. And I just dropped one of the striker cups. So let me just pause the camera for a second. So I'm back in there. You can see we have them in place. So it's just a little bit of a jostling act, but we're going to go ahead and reassemble the slide now. So all you're going to do is take your striker, push the assembly down in there, and then you're going to take something blunt. Let's see, I'm just going to use a flathead screwdriver, and I'm just going to push down on that striker and then grab my back plate right here, and we're just going to slide that into place. And once you have it here, you're just going to push it up in, and then you'll hear it lock into place when the striker snaps back. So it's a really good, strong amount of tension against that striker spring there, so I'm guessing that's where a lot of our trigger pull weight comes from. So we're going to set our slide aside now. I'm not going to take the extractor out because I don't feel like knocking that roll pin out, but it's just a traditional style extractor where it's held in with a little coil spring on the back side of the extractor, and then the roll pin holds the extractor in place. So my Stoeger frame is right here. So remember on the other video I showed you have to remove the back strap to get access to the trigger housing pin. So you just pull this retaining clip out. I'll set that down right here. We'll take the back strap off, and there you can see our pin right here, which I wish it was a solid pin. It's not. So we'll pull the block out and tap that little guy out and see what it is. I think it's... I should be able to do it with this. Let me grab a mallet. Okay, so we got that one out. Let's see what that pin looks like. There you can see it's just a regular spring steel pin. So now we're going to work on our top pins here, and we're going to see if these just push out like on the Glock, where you just got to give them pressure in the right spot. Looks like they're probably going to need some persuasion. So let's see. Nope, there it goes. So I got it to budge a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and give it some soft taps. Yeah, that came out really easy. So there's our top pin is out. I'm going to set these aside. I don't want to mix them up with the Glock pins. Let's take a look at that pin real quick, and you can see that it does have some indentations on it. So it is it's not a perfectly straight pin. It's kind of like a barbell shape. And let's go ahead and take the trigger pin out, and that's going to need some tapping too. So that might be one of the things where you got to line stuff up, because that did not, see, it's barely coming out the frame. There you can see it. Let's try it again. Not want to go. Let's move the trigger to a different position. Nope, still does not want to go. Let's try going the other direction. Nope. I'm just using a 3/32 steel punch here, by the way. So I'm just going to play around with that trigger position, sorry. And like on the Glock, that's what you have to do, is just kind of find the right spot, and then it just slides out without any more any more than finger pressure on it. This is not doing that. You can see now it's coming out just a little bit on this side of the frame, so we're going to go back the other way again. And I might have to actually switch to a steel hammer. Let's try that, I guess. So right now we're noticing that this is not going to be as friendly to detail strip as our guns from Austria. I can't get that pin to budge. But here we see the back end of the trigger assembly coming up. So here we can see our connector. And you can see this is just like on the Glock, it would just ride like this. And this portion right here is what gets pushed over by this bar right here on the underside of the slide and gives you your trigger reset. That's crazy, man. I cannot believe that pin won't budge. I'm gonna go ahead and pause again and keep working on it off camera. 1 second. Okay, so I switched to a 1/8 inch punch, 1/8 inch right here, and put it down over that hole and gave it a hell of a smack. And we got it to come out now. Let's see, this should be free now. Yep, so here's our slide stop. And we'll compare that to the Glock one in just a second. I'm going to give this just another tap, and I should be able to get it the rest of the way out. Yep. So I'm going to leave our trigger pin like this and see if I can pull the whole assembly out. It shouldn't be a problem. I think I have it out far enough. So we're just going to grab our ejector and lift up on the assembly. Here's our trigger pin right here. Which has the same 3 grooves like the OEM Glock one. I'm going to reach over here and get that. Here's the OEM Glock one. You can see it has the 3 grooves, or the 2 grooves on it, a 3-segment pin. And this is the Stoeger one, which is the exact same way. So I should be able to pull this trigger assembly out if it'll slide under the locking block mechanism, which I think I'm going to have to pry up on that locking block. So we're going to try that. Okay, here's our locking block assembly right here. And then here's our trigger assembly. So we're going to set the frame aside, and then we're going to compare this to the Glock one, and then I'll put it back together off camera. So I don't have a Glock frame right here next to me. It's upstairs and it's loaded and ready for action. So, but here's our Stoeger locking block assembly. We'll move this block out of the way. Here we have our Stoeger trigger assembly, which has a serration on it, which would be like your compact size Glock, your 1923. And here we see our trigger bar assembly has a bump. Gen 4 bars a lot of times have that knot right there on the bar. So here we can see very, very similar. There's a little bit of difference in how far this channel comes forward. This is the Stoeger one back here. The shape of the trigger housing is just barely different. There's a ledge right here, and then this is narrower there because it's going into that back strap channel, whereas the Glock is not. Let's see if I can disconnect that cruciform real quick. Here we see the length of the trigger assist spring on the Stoeger, and then here's the Glock one is shorter and fatter. It's probably about equal resistance wise. So the assembly goes back together very similar. The ejector shape is similar. This is a hair thicker and shorter from where it protrudes on the plastic housing. Like that only goes that far, and that one you can see how much longer that one is. So slightly longer on that. And then let me leave this one disconnected again. And let's look at our angle. I have a little bit of grease on the face of my Glock connector, but let's see here. And our angle looks identical for the connector. So if you have a minus connector, it's going to be less steep, and if you have a plus connector, it's going to be like this, which is going to make the trigger have more resistance go down before it drops off the striker face. So you can see though it is near, I would imagine the connector, they're the same length and everything, so I would think you'd be able to swap connectors no problem. I don't have an extra one. I don't want to fiddle around with, especially with how hard that pin was to change. I don't want to do a bunch of swapping around on it right now. But I just wanted to give you guys a good view of what those internals look like and show indeed that this thing is basically a Glock with a much more ergonomic frame, a more modernized frame, and a little bit more of a relaxed grip angle that most shooters are comfortable with. So the mag release comes out the same way as a Glock. It's that single little bar that runs up and fits into a slot, and this mag release is plastic on this. So hope you guys learned something from that, and always shoot safe.